no, I've been in pain the past couple weeks, so I definitely haven't worked out. I haven't taken anything, out the ordinary. So he was like, well, it's a good thing you came in because if you didn't, you could have died.
And I can't hide, 'cause growing pains are keeping me up at night. Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's episode on Take a Pain Check. I'm so excited to have Shanisha joining me today. Hi Shanisha, can you give me a brief introduction about yourself? Tell me a little bit about your education, your hobbies, your career, and what you've been up to recently.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. So I am Shanisha Scott. Um, Education-wise, I do have my master's in industrial and organizational psychology. I like to say a micro influencer on social media. Um, let's see what else. I'm an author. I actually did write my first book around the condition polymyositis, what I'm here to talk about. What else do I have going on? I am a wife and a mother. I do have four children and a grandchild. And yes, yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm excited to have you on this podcast. I've never had anyone with your condition on the podcast, so I'm just excited to learn more. So let's start by talking about what your diagnosis is and when you were diagnosed.
Okay, so in October 2020, I was diagnosed with polymyositis. Now, there are many forms of myositis. There's a dermatomyositis. It's like three or four under the myositis category. Now, I've never heard of myositis either. So it's very, very rare. It does involve your muscles. So I suffer from muscle weakness, muscle wasting. It impacts every muscle in your body. It can even impact like your heart, everything. Now, I happen to be in remission, thankfully, but when I was first diagnosed, it was very aggressive. Um, it was like literally within 2 or 3 weeks, I was like a normal, healthy 30 something year old woman till I was like on a walking cane and could barely get out of bed and everything. So it's very, very rare. And as a matter of fact, like a lot of rheumatologists, from my understanding, aren't very well versed on it because it is so rare.
So what symptoms led you to actually go seek healthcare professional help or guidance?
Okay, so it was really for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's just like my muscles and my joints were hurting. It felt like like after you have like an intense workout and like the next 2 or 3 days you can barely move. Well, that's how it was like for me for like, a couple weeks. I'm like, oh, well, no, that this isn't right. And just a brief background. Now, I did already have a rheumatologist because I had suffered from high inflammation. And, they thought that maybe I had like, arthritis, lupus, mixed connective tissue disease, but all that was ruled out. So it was just I had high inflammation and I didn't know where it was coming from. So I did already have a rheumatologist. So, after I was experiencing those symptoms for a couple weeks, I was like, okay, let me call my rheumatologist. So he scheduled an appointment. I went in and did a full, blood panel of everything. And then later on that evening, the test results came back and they actually had called me and I didn't answer the phone. He called me again. I didn't answer the phone because I didn't have the number stored in my phone for some reason. But my rheumatologist had left me a message and was like, hey, if you're one of those people that do not answer the phone, you need to answer the phone. So I immediately called them back and they were like, he started asking me so many questions. He was like, hey, did you recently, work out? Did you recently take, something? I'm like, well, no, I've been in pain the past couple weeks, so I definitely haven't worked out. I haven't taken anything, out the ordinary. So he was like, well, it's a good thing you came in because if you didn't, you could have died. And I'm like, what? That came out of nowhere. So again, I was relatively healthy. Yeah, I did suffer from high inflammation, but to go from that to, oh, you could have died if, you didn't come in. So it was because my muscles were just wasting and like eating away at each other. So yeah, it was crazy.
That is crazy. Just like hearing those words, like if you didn't come in sooner, like things would have been worse.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Well, I'm glad you did go to the doctor eventually and you got some answers. I'm wondering, what did the doctor say in terms of like treatment options or how to help you?
Okay, so treatment was aggressive. I started off on a very high dose of prednisone, which is a steroid. And then eventually I started taking mycophenolate. So with the prednisone, it's a steroid, so there was a lot of side effects with prednisone, but it did start getting my condition under control. So one of the markers that they diagnose polymyositis with is your CK levels or creatine kinase levels. Normally, normal CK levels are anything under 200. When I was diagnosed, I was at 10,500. So that was like a lot. But once I started the prednisone and the mycophenolate, within a couple weeks, my CK levels did dwindle down to like 900. Now that was still elevated, but it did show that the prednisone and mycophenolate was working. Now, physically, I still was like very weak. When I tell you, like, I literally watched my muscles like disappear in front of my eyes. It was like something that you would see like out of a sci-fi movie or something. Um, and I had to eventually use a walking cane because my legs were so weak and they will like give out on me. It was hard, like getting up out of the chair, getting or walking up the stairs, or it was a lot.
Because you were so weak, did you find that you went to seek other help or other sort of treatment options outside of medications? Like you would have been on medications, but like physio, OT, strength
Yes.
training, I don't know. Just because I'm hearing like muscle weakness, so I'm like, did they tell you about it or did you go out of your way to find things?
Yes, they did mention that. Now, I did not seek physical therapy until it was about 6 or 7 months into it. And I think it was just because just going through everything and just trying to get accustomed to it. And then also during that time, I was moving. So we had just bought a house. So I had, was just going through all of that movement and everything. And I had to find like a new rheumatologist once I moved in. So about 6 months into the condition, I did do physical therapy. And that did help. But I will say, even now, like I still experience weakness, like in my right leg. It's noticeably weaker, and sometimes my legs just. I mean, I'm feeling fine, but my legs just give out on me. So there's been times that I've just fell out the blue, like yeah. So still deal with a lot.
And do you think it's changed over time in terms of your symptoms? Like, have they gotten better?
Yes, now they have gotten better. Now, at one point in time, almost a year into me dealing with this, I started experiencing swallowing issues. So, literally, for about 3 to 4 months, whether it was just me drinking water, eating, I would choke literally on everything. Um, so, that is very scary. I actually lost about 10, 15 pounds during that time because I just couldn't keep anything down or couldn't like eat properly and swallow properly. And it does also can affect like your jaw muscles. So my mouth would get really tired just chewing. It literally just impacts every muscle that you could think of. It impacts, my arms and everything. They will feel really heavy. And very, very tired. So even something like taking a shower, it would be like a chore. like pulling up my pants or putting on a shirt. I would like have to ask my husband a lot of times to help me do stuff like that. So it really impacts you. Like,
And now that you kind of mentioned your husband and kind of like support at the time of your diagnosis, how did your family feel or what was going through their mind when you were being diagnosed?
it was a lot. It was a lot. Just again, I was relatively healthy, so to go to that to essentially I was disabled, like I could still get around, so to speak, but like things like, I have two little girls and like I couldn't even do their hair. Like I didn't have like the strength in my hands and arms to even put a ponytail in their hair. So, like little things like that, or I mentioned earlier that we had bought a house, so we were in the process of moving. I couldn't really help with that either, like packing or anything like that. So they had to pick up a lot of stuff that normally I was able to help with. They had to pick up that extra stuff. So it did impact us, but of course we got through it. But it was definitely, it changed everything.
Did you find yourself feeling isolated in terms of this condition itself? Like, did you know anyone else with your condition?
I personally didn't know anyone else, but I will say thank God for Facebook groups because they do have myositis Facebook groups. So, that was very comforting, so to speak, because like, of course, people can be compassionate and empathetic, but unless you're kind of going through it or something similar, like you never really know what someone that suffers with any type of condition or disability is kind of going through. So having that support system with the Facebook groups really helped me.
I know a lot of people mention like the pros and cons of Facebook groups, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've had some people in the podcast kind of mention that they've been on Facebook groups and then they go down this like rabbit hole of negativity and it's not helpful for them. But on the other hand, people find support and they are able to learn from people's stories. Have you had any of those experiences where you felt like it got too negative sometimes, or has it always been sort of empowering or a way for you to learn?
I would say for the myositis groups I'm a part of, they've always been empowering. Sometimes there might be, a disagreement here or there, but there was never anything that really negatively impacted me. I thought they were very helpful.
And so, are there any things that you've done in terms of changing your lifestyle or managing your pain? What are some things that you have done for that?
I do try to eat healthier. Now, I will say with prednisone, one of the side effects is weight gain. So I did gain probably about 25 pounds on when I was on prednisone. So I did lose 50 pounds, and that was just through eating healthier, uh, trying to not eat like the carbs and sweets and all that stuff that I normally love. But, that stuff does cause inflammation and all that. So just trying to eat healthier. Um, and now I, I would love to say exercise, but honestly, sometimes just from dealing with the condition, either the weakness or just my body has been through so much, so sometimes I'm still like really tired. So I won't. I can't say that I exercise a lot. I am trying to work on that though. But yeah, mainly just watching what I put in my body. And then as far as the prescription meds, I am still on them. I do take a low dose of prednisone now, and I do take mycophenolate. So I started off at 60 milligrams of prednisone. Now I'm down to 5. So, and actually, I was down to 1 milligram, but back in February, I went into what we call a flare. So basically, the symptoms started creeping back up. I started experiencing weakness and stuff again. So my rheumatologist did up my prednisone dose to 5 milligrams. So
I know a lot of people don't have great experiences on prednisone, not because the medication doesn't work, but because of all the side effects that come with it.
yes.
For other medications that you've been on, did you have like any similar side effects or any side effects that kind of like you're like, I don't want to take this anymore?
Well, with the mycophenolate, there was a little bit of did notice my hair shedding a little bit or hair loss. But honestly, the prednisone was the worst because with prednisone, I also end up developing osteonecrosis of my hips. So now they're saying I might need hip replacements. Thankfully, I don't have too much pain with my hips or anything now, but that is because of the prednisone. And then, like, when I was on the high dose, I had the dreaded moon face. If you've heard of that, it's just you gain like a lot of weight in your face. I had like what they call a buffalo hump. Um, yeah, it was a lot, and then like a lot of internal stuff with the prednisone. So definitely, it's kind of like a gift and a curse, the prednisone. But usually, doctors don't like to keep you on prednisone for a long period of time because of so many side effects.
Yeah, and I was on prednisone initially when I was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, and that was right off the bat. I could tell I was like eating so much more, like the moon face was happening. It was
Yeah,
very, very obvious. I felt like very heavy, if that makes sense. I feel like you understand.
yep,
But yeah, we tapered that down really quickly because I didn't really see the difference, and then we just kind of moved on from there.
right.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about challenges because I know like living with a chronic illness, you have physical limitations, but then also you experience like emotional and psychological and things like that challenges too. I was wondering, what is the greatest challenge that you've experienced so far in terms of your chronic illness?
I would say as soon as I feel any weakness creeping back up, it's just a constant state of paranoia because it's like, oh no, am I about to have to go through all of this again? Because with polymyositis, it's and I would say probably with a lot of autoimmune conditions, it's an invisible illness. So I look fine on the outside, but I could actually apply for a disability and and all that. So I'm not fine, even though I look fine. So it's like there's times where I feel that weakness creeping back up, and I'm like, it's just a psychological thing. It's like, oh no, you know, I, so I remember I had a photo shoot back in May, and my legs gave out, and I was by myself, and someone actually had to help me up or whatever. So stuff like that because everything could be going normal or whatever, and all of a sudden, I don't have any warning, like my legs will give out and I'll fall. So it's stuff like that that keeps me in a chronic state of like paranoia, like or then like even some family functions, like if we were to go to maybe like an amusement park or or just somewhere where we have to do a lot of walking, sometimes I have to take more breaks or it's those little stuff like that that impacts me and I have to think about, now. So.
Do you find yourself being more mature now or like kind of learning more and I don't know, compared to other people, do you find yourself being more mature and understanding of other people that may be going through health conditions or just like life in general?
Now I will say that I am, and I have always been empathetic. So I think that I've always had that component, but I've never dealt with nothing that impacted my health like this. So from that standpoint, I definitely empathize even more with people going through stuff. Because even at one point in time, at the beginning of the diagnosis, I would be so drained. And I think I just had like chronic fatigue, and it's like indescribable. And like from a person from the outside looking in, they might think like, oh no, you're just being lazy or you're just exaggerating. But no, I literally was drained. Like I could barely keep my eyes open sometimes. And that was just like I couldn't like pinpoint where it was coming from, but I think it was just because my body was going through so much that I developed chronic fatigue. And yeah, so it's definitely a lot.
100%. Because we kind of talked a little bit about how you have four kids. I want to talk more about that and just like managing a family while living with a condition like this. How did that work in terms of you managing your family and parenting and being a mom?
Okay, so thank God, I do have a support system. So I have my husband and I have my mom that helped out tremendously. And I do have two well, at the time they were teenagers, and so they were the older children. So they really, everyone just really helped with everything. So sometimes I would have to lean on like either my mom or my two oldest to help with their little sister's hair and stuff like that. Or, my husband, he would have to pick up more stuff like as far as like maybe picking my kids up from school or little stuff like that. So thank God that I did have a support system, but it definitely, for me, I like to consider myself very independent. So when you have like a independent mindset and like I'm a go-getter and I'm like that was just very hard for me. Like, oh no, I can't like just get up and go, or I can't help with like doing their hair in the morning or just picking up after myself or just the little things, or even like doing my own hair. Even that I because my arms were so weak and everything, even putting a ponytail in my own hair was hard. So it definitely just impacted everything.
Did you feel any sort of guilt at any point?
I did. It's especially when it came to like taking care of my little ones, like being able to do their hair and or like go to some of their school events and stuff. Because sometimes I just couldn't do it because either I was just too weak and stuff like that. So yeah, that definitely or just putting that extra burden on my husband as well because he had to pick up extra stuff. So yeah, I definitely felt guilty. I did.
What is something that you think is most commonly misunderstood about polymyositis?
Um, well, it like I said, it is a rare condition, so a lot of people don't know about it. But I think one of the things is when I mention like muscle weakness and all that, that people probably just think it's like, you know, oh, I just need to rest a little bit. But no, this is literal, my muscles literally wasted away. So that's why I had to do like the physical therapy and stuff because my muscle mass wasted away, or things like, when you think about just drinking some water, if it impacts your throat muscles, like I'm choking on everything. So I think that people don't really understand how debilitating it is. It really is you know, it really impacts everything or things like walking a lot. Sometimes I can't because, my muscles get tired and weak. And so I think sometimes people may think I'm exaggerating, or I know sometimes people mean well when they try to, relate to it all like, oh, well, yeah, I done well, such and such happened to me. But sometimes there's no correlation because, you having like, um, let's say I'll use working out like a couple days, you work out and you're kind of sore. It's nothing compared to a condition actually destroying your muscles and you're actually weak
Yeah.
so yeah.
I feel like you can't compare those two things, and people probably tend to compare it to find like the easiest way for them to sort of understand, but like
Yeah.
it's not really understanding because it's completely comparing it to something that doesn't correlate, like you said.
Yes. Yes.
And that's so rough, and I think that's why it's so important that we raise awareness. So, how are some ways that you raise awareness about this condition?
Yes. So initially, when I got diagnosed, I was going on YouTube trying to find videos, and there just wasn't a lot about it. So initially, I started making YouTube videos, just tracking my journey with it. And then a year, and then of course I would make posts on like other social media platforms too. And then my first year into it, I decided to write a book about it. I wrote my first book when I got sick. And that was tracking my first year of, from my diagnosis to, everything I went through in that first year. So I thought that was really important just so I could kind of tell my story. And then also, if someone's looking up, trying to look up information on polymyositis, they could say, oh, okay, well, let me see what she went through. And, or even, polymyositis, even if you have some other type of condition, not necessarily myositis, anyone that's dealing with any type of, physical ailment I think can relate to my book. And then, me just constantly getting the word out there. Now, I am in remission, so I will say I probably don't talk about it as much, but I do try to still raise awareness. So, like, I recently re-uploaded my first YouTube video to my TikTok platform, just, trying to raise awareness and all that about it. And then, of course, I, support, all the myositis foundations and all that, or, myositis awareness month and all that.
It's so amazing that you're trying to find different ways to raise awareness. The only way for people to know about it is the more we talk about it, and you're finding like different mediums, which is amazing. I'm wondering how you kind of got to that and the journey of advocacy to talk about your condition when people are usually initially diagnosed. It is quite hard to like understand your condition. And then on top
Yes.
of that, now you're talking about it on this podcast, for example, and through social
Yes.
media. So how did you get there?
You know what? I think it was well, of course, once I started talking about it, different people started reaching out, like yourself. And and also, well, and I forgot to mention, I was also publishing a couple of magazines just by me talking about it and whatnot. Um, and then, just using my platform because again, it looks like, from the outside looking in, it looks like, I have no problems in life. But no, I do have an invisible illness, a rare illness or autoimmune condition that impacts me. And this is where I was at just, 3 or 4 years ago. This is where I was at. I literally had to use a walking cane. I literally, couldn't swallow anything without choking and all that. So I think me being able to, use my social media platforms and then having people like yourself reach out. And then, when I get opportunities, I do often speak about, like I said, I have talked about this in some magazines and stuff. So definitely, I'm thankful and grateful that I'm able to get, especially with polymyositis and myositis in general, just being so rare. I'm glad that I'm able to use my platforms and any outlet I can to speak about it.
So you wrote a book called When I Got Sick, A Story of Tragedy and Triumph. Can you tell me a little bit about this book and why you decided to write it?
Um, okay, so just a background. I've always loved reading and writing, and I always aspired to be an author. I kind of never knew that would come like this because when I got sick was my first book, but it was really just what going through something like polymyositis is such not only physically but mentally and emotionally it takes a toll on somebody. So it definitely took a toll on me uh, just from the mental aspect of it. So writing the book, I'm like, okay, I got to get my story out here. I got to talk about polymyositis because again, when I first started looking polymyositis up, there wasn't a lot that came up. And I wanted someone, people that were looking, for polymyositis, if they happen to be diagnosed with it for them to have some type of information about it. So I just really just tracked, my first year, everything that I experienced from diagnosis to, the what I experienced with like the prednisone, the side effects and everything of that. The encounters like, I remember one time when I had sat on the floor because my muscles are so weak, were so weak, I could not get up from the floor. So I literally had to like crawl back and like raise myself up uh, on my bed or whatever because like it's like the little things that we don't have a second thought of, like with polymyositis. And I still have trouble getting up off the floor, but because of the weakness in my legs. But at one point in time, I couldn't just, get up off the floor. Um, so I had to be very mindful of, okay, I can't sit on the floor, or what if I fall? I'm not going to be able to get up by myself. Uh, so I just documented all of that. Or, I remember when I had went to the chiropractor, and because of my arms were so weak, when they actually like to turn over, I ended up falling on the ground because my arms were so weak. So it's stuff like I documented all those little instances in the book, and you know, um, and I included pictures of my moon face and all that, like just so people could just get, a full picture of what really went on during the first year of me battling it.
So there are actually like visuals and like it's sort of like a diary.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
definitely, definitely. Yep.
It's really nice to kind of read something like that because it's so personal, and I think people will understand it even more, especially because it's coming from someone with lived experience. What do you hope that people gain from reading your book?
Um, just with well, of course, knowing more about polymyositis and myositis, but just in general, anyone battling any autoimmune condition or things like cancer, or anything, just anyone battling anything, um, hopefully that my book can give them what I like to say, maybe a beacon of hope that we all do go through trials and tribulations, but um, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep your faith, and try to have positive people around you to pour life into you. Also, with my book, I would like to say that it just gives what really happens, and you can never judge a book by its cover, you know. Uh, I guess no pun intended, uh, but yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover, because a lot of people that are dealing with any type of autoimmune condition, it is a lot of people look fine on the outside, but on the inside, our bodies is at war within itself. So, and I also, from either caregivers or family or friends, also have that empathy and compassion. Like, if your family member says, "Oh, I'm not feeling good today," or "I'm tired," they're not being extra or exaggerating or trying to get attention. It's like, no, I really don't feel good. I really am weak, or I really am drained. So hopefully people either battling any type of health condition can relate, and on the opposite end of that, anyone that a family member, friend can also get that view of it as well.
Amazing. So I'll definitely link that down below for anyone who wants to take a look at any of the work that you have done. Your work as an industrial and organizational psychologist plays a huge role in the workplace. Can you talk a little bit about what this role entails and why it's so important for you?
Sure. Okay. So with industrial and organizational psychology, also called IO psychology, it's really from the aspect of, trying to understand, and I'll use this as an example. Let's say an organization has been suffering from like low employee survey results. So as an IO psychology, we come in and try to say, okay, what is really driving these results? Why are the employee scores so low? Is it because, okay, maybe we've been on overtime for a year, or maybe they maybe they haven't had adequate raises or bonuses. So our job is to go in, do maybe focus groups, or, just give the organization different pointers. Okay, let's do X, Y, and Z to get your employee surveys up, to have your employees, have, a more positive experience in the workplace. So,
That's so amazing. And I've honestly never heard about that before. So it's just nice to learn a little bit about what this role is. What inspired you to start your own practice?
Okay, so with Beauty from Ashes, now it's funny that you mentioned that. So I got diagnosed with polymyositis in October 2020, and simultaneously, that's when I actually started Beauty from Ashes, and that was I had got my certification as a life coach back then. Now, unfortunately, I had to halt Beauty from Ashes because I had to deal with polymyositis and just focus on my health. But Beauty from Ashes, you know, there's a Bible verse, Beauty for Ashes, and it's just really just encompassing. And I like to say, like, God gives beauty where destruction resides. So basically, like, you can overcome anything. And so that's like the basis of Beauty from Ashes. But again, I am also, I just mentioned I'm a certified life coach or whatever. Now, I do plan on getting back into being a life coach because that is one of my passions as well. But it's just really because my health has been so up and down over the past several years. That's why I haven't really went full on force with it because when I do start it back up, I want to be able to really focus on it. So yeah, that's Beauty from Ashes.
And on top of that, you wrote a book titled Birthing the Leader Within You. Can you talk a little bit about how does your program differ from the content you wrote in the book?
Okay, so birthing the leader within you, that just really derived from, I've been a leader in corporate America for many years. So that was really, for me, that was my kind of best practices for anyone that is aspiring to be a leader, or even, if you're a current leader, what I've learned throughout the years. So it's kind of like I wrote that as like a blueprint, like, hey, um, it's good to do X, Y, and Z. Because I know for myself, when I first started out being a leader, it was kind of, okay, am I doing this right? And I'm also an introvert. So even me like putting myself out there, that was like a big step for me. Even on like on social media now, like I have to be very intentional because I am an introvert. So my first mind is to just be like, well, no, I don't want to post, or no, I don't want to do this. So writing that book, it was just really given my insight on what leaders or aspiring leaders should maybe or could do in their leadership role to make their employee experience better and their journey as a leader. So.
No, that's so great to hear. And I'm wondering, how do you balance like having your own practice, writing these books, and your health?
You know what? I honestly, because my health has been so all over the place the past several years, I really I struggle with being consistent with everything because I'll have a good couple weeks and then all of a sudden, I'm not feeling good. So then, of course, I have to put my health, on the front line because, I've also, during this time, I've also developed other health conditions like I was diagnosed last year with blood clots. I also was diagnosed with something called intracranial hypertension. So all that, and of course I can't stem it back from polymyositis, but I will say since polymyositis, I've had to deal with other stuff. So really, I, I am proud of myself because I have done a lot in the past several years, but I still strive to be more consistent, and that does depend on my health. Am I feeling good or am I not? But on the times that I'm feeling good, I'm definitely gonna put stuff out there on social media or, like I said, like being an author and writing, that's one of my passions. And it just really depends on how I'm feeling, but I'm always striving to be the best me and just help people.
I never had such a positive mindset at the beginning of my diagnosis, and it like slowly changed because I realized that things do get better and you find ways to cope.
I don't want to say I had a negative mindset at the beginning. I think it was more so I was just like kind of scared, like, especially when like it started impacting me physically, like, oh no, I have to use a walking cane, or oh no, I'm choking on food. But I always try to speak life into myself, and you know, and then I also will say, well, I'm not going to claim this condition, so I used to say the condition as opposed to
Oh,
my condition. Like I
yeah.
used to do stuff like that, and I still try to do that. Now, once in a while, I will say my condition, but I try to steer clear away from that stuff because I don't want to claim this. Um, but it is a struggle because sometimes especially on the days where out the blue, it's like, oh, I'm weak again, or I'm feeling the weakness, or it's like, oh, I'm tired of dealing with this, or if I'm at a family function and I'm starting to get tired, and because I'm still relatively young, so I'm like, no, so there's some times where I'm like, oh, I just wish that I can go back to life before this. But I am, I do see the light at the end of the tunnel because I am in remission now, and I don't have to use a walking cane anymore, and I'm not choking while I'm swallowing. So I always try to be like, well, no, there are positive things happening.
It's interesting because I agree with you. I'd say that I was sort of, it wasn't negative, but it was like, well, I at least thought that I didn't know what I could do with this condition. And like having this, I didn't know what path my life would like take me to. It wasn't an entire denial, but it was like, why me? Like that was the biggest question. It was like, why me? Why do I have this condition? Like, why not anyone else? Kind of like blaming it on others and myself, which I think is not the best thing to do. I don't do that anymore, but I still have that like question, like, why did I get this? Like, what did I do to deserve this? But then I realized that like, I think this diagnosis has shaped my career path, or like what I'm doing, and give me the opportunity to meet other people and just like do so many things that I would not have done without this. Obviously, I'd go back to life without arthritis any day, but I think just like being in this spot, I'm still like being grateful because it could be worse.
Yes, and then okay, you mentioned that you had juvenile arthritis, so
Yeah,
you've been dealing with this
since I was
since.
13.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it's definitely, and that's what I've seen like over time it's changed like the way that I think about it and the way that I've adapted and managed. Like when I was 13, I was like I don't know what I'm doing. I was crying a lot and all these different things because like you get made fun of, and there's so many different things like in school that happens versus now like it's so different. Like I don't care what people have to say about it. Like your mindset changes, and that's what I meant by like shifting my mindset. And I think over time that's what happened. Like over time you kind of like learn different things and learn how to cope and manage your condition. And so I think that's what happened with me. I wanted to end off the podcast episode with an advice segment. So, how can friends and family best support individuals with a rheumatic disease?
I would say, especially when they have the bad days, if even if it's like, order them some food, or cook for them, or come and clean up, and just really be open minded. It's like, people that battle these rheumatic diseases or any type of illness, we're really struggling. We're not trying to get attention or anything. So just trying to be compassionate from that level, and trust like your family or friends. We want to be able to participate. We want life as normal, but our body is at war within itself, and our body's not letting us. So if you can, just be supportive, sometimes just being a listening ear, on the bad days, if your friends battling anything, if they have children, maybe, taking their kids for a few hours or a day, um, just anything like that helps.
Thank you so much, Shanisha, for coming on today's podcast episode to share your experience with polymyositis. We talked a little bit about your journey from diagnosis to medications and kind of other support systems. We talked about relationship dynamics, family support, and you discussed your work as an IO psychologist and how the workplace environment plays a role in morale and success. We end off the podcast episode by talking about your career as an author, publishing 2 books, one about your personal story and other about your success in the workplace. We also talked about kind of your advocacy journey and the role of social media. So everyone, like, comment, subscribe, check out Shanisha's social media channels, which I will link down below, and I'll see everyone in 2 weeks on Take a Pain Check. Thank you so much, Shanisha.
Thank you.
Bye.